And take a deep breath in. Okay. So, as I've mentioned before, using the brain dump to empty the mind, really good exercise before you want to sit down and focus, give your undivided attention to a task. If you have too many things on your mind, you're going to be mentally juggling and rearranging the internal furniture while you're trying to focus on something else. I like to just get it out, get it onto the paper. That way I don't have to hold on to it and not be concerned about forgetting something. Having said that, if throughout this class something comes to mind that you don't want to hold in your mind, just write it down. Calling conditions, really good exercise for tuning in the moment and just getting a clear sense of where you are physically and emotionally. It also helps to bring the mental body into the physical body and into the emotional body. It's a grounding practice. It's also cultivating greater awareness and sensitivity for the fluid stream of feeling and sensation. During both exercises, very important to be aware of breathing, as breathing is connected to feeling and sensation and awareness. Okay? I'm going to do a brief review from last week's class. We did a series of 30-second breathing exercises, and the first one is just natural breathing. We're just going to focus on breathing, see how it feels, how our body feels. Posture is important when you're breathing intentionally. So you want to make sure that you're sitting in alignment, head, shoulders right over your hips, feet flat on the floor if possible. So we're just going to start the clock for 30 seconds. Breathe however you wish. It can be in and out through the nose, in through the nose, out through the mouth, or in and out through the mouth. Here we go. 30 seconds. Just observe your breath. Don't be afraid to make sound on the exhale if you wish to, if you need to. 10 seconds. And take a deep breath in. Good. The second 30-second exercise is as you breathe in, you say to yourself internally, or if you wish to say it out loud, I feel. And you are registering whatever you are feeling physically and or emotionally at the top of the breath. I feel. As you exhale, I release this feeling and flow. Again, as you breathe in, you say, I feel at the top of the breath. Exhale through the mouth, let it out like a sigh. I release this feeling and flow. 30 seconds, here we go. I feel. I release this feeling and flow. I feel. I release this feeling and flow. Again. I feel. I release this feeling and flow. Let's do one more. I feel. I release this feeling and flow, and pause. Now just tune in, breathe naturally, and notice how you feel right now. Gently bring your awareness from the top of your head through your body, scan from the top to the bottom, and just notice. No judgment, no expectation. Good. The next 30-second exercise is I breathe, I feel, I flow. So it's a more condensed version of what we just did. And you can do that internally in your mind, such as I'm breathing in, I can say, I breathe, I feel, I flow. Or if you want to do it all on the exhale, I breathe, I feel, I flow. It's totally up to you. 30 seconds. Begin. I breathe, I feel, I flow. I breathe, I feel, I flow. I breathe, I feel, I flow. One more time. I breathe, I feel, I flow. Good. And again, tune in, see how you feel right now. Just notice. No judgment, no expectation. By setting the intention to be aware of breathing, aware of feeling, and to become fluid, we instantly begin to shift our state of being from tense or rigid to soft and fluid. So we got one more exercise for 30 seconds, and that's to soften. I soften my breath, I soften my body, I soften and flow. I soften my breath, I soften my body, I soften and flow. When you do it, make sure that you are following your own command. Soften your breath, soften your body, and just become fluid. Here we go, 30 seconds. Begin. I soften my breath, I soften my body, I soften and flow. I soften my breath, I soften my body, I soften and flow. Again. I soften my breath, I soften my body, I soften and flow. One more time. I soften my breath, I soften my body, I soften and flow. And now just breathe 3 times, very gently but deeply. Soften, smile, breathe, and listen. Soften the focus in your eyes, gentle smile as you breathe and listen. Good, 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 good. Okay, so those are all individual breathing exercises. They can be used in succession or just individually. I like to say it out loud when I can, if I'm not in a group setting. If I am in a group setting, if I'm sitting in the subway and I'm feeling tense or anxious and I want to soften and become fluid, I just do it all internally in my mind. And I can just breathe in and out through my nose. Nobody has to know. All right, good. So last week we covered the inner smile focus, that gentle focus in the eyes. Throughout any exercise, that is the foundation. The light, soft, just a little bright focus in the eyes, which connect to the brain and to the nervous system. And the inner smile helps to relax the whole body. Acknowledge, accept, and allow. Whatever you're feeling, whatever you're experiencing, moment to moment, breath to breath. I call it the 3 A's. Acknowledge, accept, and allow. So I put them together as soften, smile, breathe, and listen to whatever I'm feeling and experiencing, and I'm listening to my environment. I acknowledge, accept, and allow whatever is present at this moment. No judgment, no expectation. So that becomes a mantra that you can use at any time. And some of my theater students who come back and connect with me years later without uh, question, they always say the thing that they always remember on a daily basis is that mantra to soften, smile, breathe, and listen, acknowledge, accept, and allow, because it helps them to adjust their state of being quickly, especially when they get into a reactive state, like watching the news and then getting anxious and upset, and they realize that they're now in reactive mode, And they're going to shift consciously out of that state to a present state. If you are aware of your breath, if you are aware of listening, which you can only do in the present, and you can feel your body, that will bring you into the present space-time. So it's a really compact mantra that you can do silently or out loud. We got into the 4 connections: breath, center, ground, and space. 4 dimensions of awareness. So I can say to myself as I breathe in, breath, center, ground, and space, I am commanding my focus and awareness to become inclusive. I don't want to focus on just one thing. This is a multi-dimensional awareness practice. And it's not difficult. We do it all the time. We're just not fully conscious of it. Breath, center, ground, space. Center has 2 aspects to be conscious of. Your vertical center from the top of your head right down through the center of your perineum at the bottom, at the base of your body. And that would be your physical alignment. And then your horizontal center just below your belly button, your Dan Tian. So if you were to draw that line down the center and across there, you would have like an upside down cross. It's that center point and center line that I want to imagine and sense. I want to feel. I want to feel my alignment, to be centered, align my head, shoulders, hips in alignment. If I'm standing, over the center of my feet. If I'm sitting, equal between both sit bones with my feet flat on the floor. So now as I come in with the breath, I go down through my center. I am now aware of my connection to the floor or to the ground. And then circularly expand your awareness to include whatever space you are in the moment. Just to be aware of it. Breath, center, ground, space. Good. And last week we did a standing meditation, our breathing Qigong practice of activating energy and sending it into the ground. And we also did some Tui Na brushing of the body. You can review those by watching last week's class. There's more I want to get to today. What I want to address today are some simple meditation practices and look at the differences between meditation, contemplation, which are often synonymous in the West. We use those terms to mean the same thing quite often. And the use and value of detachment in that process. I've studied meditation. I've been meditating for 53 years. I started when I was 10 years old in martial art class. And we started with a very simple meditative process. In Korean, it's called muyam. And it just means breathing meditation. And we would sit very straight and just focus on breathing, just like we did at the beginning today. 30 seconds of just observing our breath. Now, we can also describe that as a single point meditative practice. That means you're going to use one object of attention to focus on for a period of time. That object can be anything, but you have to understand that the object you choose can affect the quality of your experience in meditation. If I'm going to use my breath, which is one of the time-tested traditions in all meditative practices, because we have to breathe, I'm just observing the breath, in and out, in and out, in and out. I observe the feeling. Now, what I notice is that my mind, my intellect, wants to think. Also, it wants to travel through space and time and go exploring because that is our nature. What we're training the mental body to do is to ground and center on a single point of focus for a period of time. There are many forms of meditation that we can play with, but this one of grounding and centering the mental body is essential for developing mental endurance to stay connected for, let's say, 30 seconds. And even 30 seconds for most people is a huge challenge, especially considering that today scientific studies have shown that the average attention span is 8 seconds. And that is in business. That a person can only sustain their attention on a single object for about 8 seconds before they shift it. Our technology has had a huge impact on our mental endurance. We're so used to just swiping through the phone, changing our attention from one object to another, to another, to another, very, very quickly. And so we get into that habit even when we don't have our phone. When you hold your attention on a single object of attention for more than 30 seconds, let's say a minute, or you're going to sit down and say, I'm going to just hold this for 3 minutes. One of the things that you notice is that you start to become aware of what is present inside of your body, inside of your nervous system, in terms of an energy charge, a feeling, a sensation. It's difficult for many people to acknowledge that feeling and continue to focus on the breath because for many people, they don't like what they feel. Now, that could be physical discomfort or pain. It could be emotional energy that we are not comfortable with. And if you don't know how to empty your vessel of that charge, of that energy, and get it out and create a neutral space, your alternative is to shift your attention away from it, to move the mental body away from the feeling and or sensation. And that is to go out of the body through space and time. Now, that creates fragmentation of mind from body. And as I discussed in the Struggling Gracefully class, which is on the website, when you fragment, several things start to happen. The body starts to become tight, the breathing becomes shallow, you become numb. And that numbness, that desensitized feeling of being disassociated from your body, physically and emotionally, is a survival tactic for processing discomfort of any kind. Working with people in the hospital who have had surgeries and they're in a lot of pain, even with pain medication, they can still be in a lot of pain. And they don't want to go into the body, they want to get out of it. One effective way to do that is to watch television. And it really does desensitize their experience for a period of time because the mind is not fully present. So the tolerance and endurance is one of staying present in the bodies for as long as you can before you take off and disassociate. And I like to do this standing in like embrace the tree posture because it brings my attention to my legs when my knees are bent, and I can feel my body and my breath. Another point about your object of attention. Now that can be your breath, a point inside your body, like your lower dantian or your heart, or even your third eye center. It can be a mantra, a phrase that you say to yourself, such as, I breathe, I feel, I flow, over and over and over again. It can be an image like a mandala that you focus on. I prefer whatever the object of attention is, that it's inside my body and not outside of it. And there are many meditative practices where I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to go to my happy place, to my sanctuary of my mind. It could be a place that I visited in nature or in a temple someplace. And I imagine being in that space. But here's the thing I want you to understand. You can project to another space in this dimension. And your mental body can go there to a large percentage, like about 80% of your mental body can go to that space, wherever it might be. But when your mental body and your focus is out of the body, it takes energy out of the body as well. So in Tai Chi, we say, mind leads energy. And if I'm going to focus outside of my body, I must recognize that my energy, my vital energy, is going to follow my focus. And it can be depleting if you spend a lot of time meditating on objects outside of the body. That's why I like to bring that mental image. Let's say it's a beautiful lake, a pond, and I have several that I can imagine very clearly. I'm going to bring it inside. I want to bring it inside my heart because I can open that heart space to place that image inside, and I can still sense it, I can still feel it, but I'm keeping the energy in the body. In addition, whatever reaction that I have to that space of joy, of vibrancy, of curiosity, stays in the body instead of outside of it. So this is a very subtle point that I don't hear very many meditation teachers talk about. And I wanted to bring that to your attention. So now, single point meditation. I'm going to breathe into my center and imagine my lower dantian about 2 inches below my belly button and in toward my spine. Let's say in between my spine and the front of my belly button. I can imagine that energy center any way I choose, and so can you. It can be a crystal, a light, a color, a shape of some kind. I like to use something with light because I want to begin to activate the light body inside the physical body with that imagery and intention. So I'm going to breathe and focus in on my dantian. And if I can place my hands over my dantian just below my belly. And as I breathe, I feel the belly expand gently and contract gently. And I imagine my dantian, again, it can be a jewel of some kind or just a bright ball of light. I like to use white For my dantian, you can use another color as long as you can sustain it. Keep your attention there. So we're going to start with 30 seconds of single point breathing and dantian. And just see how it goes. Here we go. Begin. You can have your eyes open or closed. And relax. That was 30 seconds. Was that difficult to stay connected to your object of attention, or did thoughts come in, or did your mind wander? No judgment on this. It's really about developing awareness. We want to observe the habit of our mind to react or travel and then gently bring it back. I think of training the mind kind of like training a puppy. You know, training a puppy to sit still. And if you've ever trained a puppy to sit still, it takes a lot of practice and repetition because the puppy is just so curious and excited about everything. And that's our nature. That's the nature of our awareness, our consciousness. Wants to travel and experience, but we have to not tame it, but train it to be still. Stillness, the power of stillness, is one of the benefits of single point meditation. Now, you can practice this with a stopwatch. I'm using my phone to do that. And you can set a timer for 30 seconds, for 1 minute, for 90 seconds, 2 minutes, and see how long you can keep that focus centered and anchored on that object of attention. The benefit of anchoring the mind on a single object of attention for a period of time is that it gives your mental body a rest, because our minds are so active all the time, 24 hours a day, unless we focus on a point for a period of time. And now this constant bouncing from object of attention to object of attention, reacting to whatever we're focusing on, generating emotional charges, we give it a rest. And we need that rest. We need to have that quiet space in the mind. Now, there is a misconception in meditation that we're supposed to clear our mind of everything and think of nothing. Not going to happen. I have had moments of that type of experience, and it can go one of two basic ways. The first is that you feel like you are expanding exponentially and being absorbed into the universe. That is what we call becoming one with all that is. And that's a very interesting experience. There's no thought. There's only awareness and connection. And that's a rare experience. The other side of that, if there was nothing in your mind at all, you would suddenly panic, because that would be akin to death of the intellect, or death of the ego, the personality. And it's kind of terrifying. Um, so it's not necessary to clear the mind because you really can't effectively. That's very advanced. Instead, have an object to connect to ground with, to center your attention on. That gives your mind a rest. It also calms your heart. Last week I talked about the connection between mind and heart. They're intimately connected. If the mind is racing, the heart beats fast. If the heart is beating fast, the mental tempo speeds up to match it. So as the mind becomes slower and focused and eventually still, so does the heart. And all of the feeling that the heart generates just sort of balances. And the third thing is that our overall physical energy has a chance to harmonize and balance. The energy of the body, the chi, the prana, however you want to describe it, is intimately affected by the activity of the mind. If the mind is chaotic, so is your energy in your body. And your pulse will quicken and you'll flood your system with hormones. All sorts of reactions physiologically happen when the mind is in distress or hypervigilance, angry. Understanding the connection between mind and the physical body and the emotional body is really important. When you understand that it's all one system, it's a multi-dimensional system that reflects each moment, each breath through each dimension, moment to moment, breath to breath. You cannot really separate them completely. If you do, you no longer exist. So focusing on a single object of attention for a period of time helps to still the mind, calm the heart, and balance our overall energy. And what you'll notice is physical tension subsides. You might feel momentarily tired or almost exhausted because you're dropping into your full presence, becoming aware of your energy level. And for many people who are constantly busy, have a fast inner mental tempo, they're going at a quick tempo all day long that is often interpreted as high energy. There is a difference. You can have a quick tempo and be running on empty. Tempo is one aspect, and it's something that we often, everybody has their own unique inner tempo. And it's really important to figure out what yours is. I like to discover that doing the Tai Chi form or doing a simple Qigong form. And when we do it in a group, I will say, do it at the tempo that feels right for you, that feels the most comfortable for you. And you will see everybody moving at different tempos, different speeds, because we all have our own inner tempo, which is pretty consistent throughout the day. It's the mental tempo that governs the tempo of the bodies. Once you find your specific inner tempo and you feel it, now you can start to work with it consciously. You can speed it up, you can slow it down. But for most people, they're not even aware that they have an inner tempo, and they're just on it all the time. And for people who are fast inner tempo, like ADHD people who are really quick all the time, they often are not aware of how little energy they actually have at any given moment until their tempo slows down. And then they tune in and they go, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Because we can mask our energy level with tempo. So when you're breathing for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, start with whatever tempo feels appropriate, and then soften. Start by softening the focus in your eyes, go through your body, soften the body, and what you will notice is that tempo begins to shift. It usually slows down if you can keep your attention on your single object within the body. If you are going to think distressing thoughts, you will notice that your heart will begin to beat faster, your breath will become shallower and either quicker, or it will begin to freeze. This is all part of the process. There's no judgment about it. It's not right or wrong. It's observing how the object that we choose to focus on affects the quality of our experience. I want to choose an object of attention that does not have significant meaning to me in terms of, I certainly don't want to pick a violent image, a fearful image, a sad image, because I'm going to interpret that. So in the Eastern tradition of meditation, we are given symbols, mandalas, objects to focus on, sacred symbols or sacred geometry. And we're not really told any meaning. We're just told to continue to observe it, moment to moment, breath to breath. As you continue to focus on your single object of attention, you will notice the mind wanting to come in and have a conversation, wanting to think about your to-do list, wanting to think about what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow. This is all natural. It's all part of being human. Don't judge yourself for it. Observe, notice, and bring your attention gently back to your object, your single point object of attention. That's the training. It's so simple. It is not easy in the beginning. It's a challenge. And I've had people say, I tried meditation, I'm just no good at it. And I look at them and say, what do you mean you're not good at it? How long did you do it? How many times have you done it? Are you good at anything the first 10 times you do it? No. You have to repeat. You have to practice. That's why it's called a meditative practice. Okay? One of the mistakes that people make is that they think they're supposed to sit down for an hour and meditate. And if you're going to try to do that your first 10 times, you're most likely going to end up frustrated and disappointed because you're not going to be able to sustain it. You have to build tolerance and endurance just like you do going to the gym. This is mental exercise. Start with small increments, 30 seconds or a minute, 3 minutes tops in the beginning. I like to do it in 1 to 5 minute spans many times throughout my day, not just once. There's also this misconception that if I meditate for an hour in the morning, I'm going to be chill all day. I doubt it. Not in today's world. All you got to do is look at the media or talk to somebody who's stressed out, and it's going to affect you, and it's going to affect your state of being, your inner tempo, the quality of your energy. You're no longer in your chilled meditative state. That is life. I don't meditate once and expect it to last. I meditate frequently. I meditate sitting on the train. I meditate all throughout the day. I'm just going to be still and focus on my breath and listen and observe for as long as I care to, which is usually somewhere around 5 minutes. I do have a meditative practice at night before I go to bed. I like to sit for about 20 minutes. Sometimes it goes longer, sometimes shorter. But I like to sit and breathe until my mind is anchored in my body and in my breath. And I'm just observing it. It's so much easier to go to sleep in that state than it is trying to sleep with an active mind. On my website, I have a little breathing for sleep exercise, and part of it is doing a brain dump before going to bed. Because what we often do is we all night long are going through our to-do list, all the things that we don't want to forget that we have to do tomorrow. Well, if you write them on a piece of paper, you don't have to constantly juggle them in your mind while you're trying to sleep. The biggest reason that people don't sleep is their mind is too active. Empty the mind, center the mind in the breath, in the body, in the space, and then let go. And you can go into the sleep state more gently and easily and quicker. If you wake up in the middle of the night with a lot on your mind, write it down. Look at it and go, okay, I don't have to think about it. It's there. Now I'm going to go back and breathe and soften, smile, listen, go back to sleep again. So some objects of attention, the breath, any of the chakras in the body. I do a lot of meditation in my heart now, of just opening that heart space that we talked about in inner guidance and allowing our greater soul consciousness light to come through the heart and just keep that gate open and feel more of who you are. And that is the light body practice of filling the physical body with the light of your consciousness, of your soul, that is anchored in the heart center. You can visualize that any way you choose. Another meditative practice is the waterfall, because this also has an added benefit. I sit, I breathe, and receive this beautiful image of energy flowing down with the force of gravity through the body and out through the feet. And I've talked about it in some of the other classes as well. Soften, smile, breathe, and receive this stream. Visualize it with as much detail as you care to. Give it color, give it texture, temperature, sound, give it dimension so that you can see it very clearly. For me, it's luminous, it's colorful, it's like this rainbow flowing through my body, liquid. And as I become aware of thoughts or feelings or intrusive images, I just pour it into the stream and watch it flow out of my body. And I can hold that space, that image, that intention. I can be aware of my breath and that gentle motion for quite a period of time. And the longer that I stay there, the clearer I feel, because that is also a cleansing meditative intention of flowing out of down through the body and into the ground. Any excess, negative, or toxic energy that we might have picked up from someone else, from our environment, or generated internally through our own emotional reactions, can be gently discharged out of the body with that imagery and with your breathing. If you want to use a mantra, you have plenty. I breathe, I feel, I flow. Very simple. Om Mani Padme Om, or just Om, over and over. Transcendental meditation is a practice. It's a mantra practice in that you are given a specific mantra to you from your teacher, and that's what you do. You sit and you just repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. It becomes that single object of attention for a period of time. So there are different styles and methods within the meditative practice. Simple is good. I've studied Taoist esoteric meditative practices that can be very complex, traveling through the body from one point to another point, through this meridian, through that meridian. It's one of the more complicated processes. In certain Tibetan mandala meditations, you are building a complex, multi-dimensional image in your mind, layer by layer. That is advanced. We don't need to do that. What we need is to ground and center our mind just for a period of time long enough to become centered and more still. Now I want to talk a little bit about contemplation. In the West, we associate meditation and contemplation kind of as the same thing. I'm coming from an Eastern perspective in the meditation practice, but contemplation can be very similar to meditation, but the intention is different. In meditation, if we're doing a single object, single point meditation, is to hold that focus for a period of time. Another way of meditating is just to observe the flow. This is mindfulness meditation. Observe the thoughts, observe the feelings and sensations moment to moment. A little tricky because we tend to want to think about what we're seeing in our mind's eye or what we're feeling or sensing, which will lead to interpretation and reaction and chain reaction. So that one's can be a little tricky, but contemplation is about looking at an object, an issue, an event in a neutral space. It's kind of, for me, it's like problem solving. It's a tool sometimes for me to do that. So if I'm trying to solve a problem, I'm going to create that neutral space in my body. And this is what we covered in the inner guidance class in the first one. To go in and open that neutral space and just hold it. And now bring that object into that space to observe it. And in that space, my intention is to see it for what it is, not for what I want it to be or don't want it to be. There, within that, there is judgment, there's expectation, there's some bias of some kind. I don't want to use those filters. And this is a challenge. To contemplate effectively, you have to let those go. And you just observe it, you look at it. It's almost like I'm going to rotate it. I want to walk around and look at it from every angle and go, well, that's interesting. The more I look at it, unfiltered, unemotional, the more I see, the more depth, the more dimension, the more possibilities of whatever that might be. So contemplation is similar in that I want to hold that single object of attention, but my goal is to look at it from as many different points of view as I can, unfiltered, and to try and sense, see, and feel the truth of whatever that is. If it's an issue, I need to see it for what it is, as it is, in the context of all that is. If I can see it clearly for what it is, often I begin to see probable outcomes, potential pathways of action in response, more depth, more understanding of whatever that issue is. And that can be a memory of, let's say you had an argument with someone, and instead of describing it and reacting to it emotionally, I'm going to just detach, almost like I'm looking at it from a distance in that neutral space. And I'm looking at it from above or from the side, any angle. And I want to just watch it, look at it. And now I can ask, well, what happened there? What was that person's point of view? What were they attempting to communicate? How did they feel? This allows me to look at more dimensionality. Instead of, I had an argument, we ended up screaming at each other, and now I'm upset. That flattens all that dimensionality down into a charged reactive image. So contemplation, for me, is that process. I have to be still. I have to be calm. I want to go through all those steps. 4 connections: breath, center, ground, space. Soften, smile, breathe, listen. Acknowledge, accept, and allow without judgment or expectation. Bring it into the neutral space of my heart, mind, soul, light. Shed the light on it. And then begin to look at it. If you begin to react to it emotionally, pull back. Go back to making your mind still and calming your heart. This is a delicate practice. It's almost like doing surgery. You know, I mean, you got to go in very gently. It's a delicate process. Just go in and observe. One of my teachers said, look, all you got to do is open the gate and look inside. You don't have to go in with a shovel and a pitchfork and begin digging away, because then that stirs up a lot of other things. In both practices, meditation and contemplation, one of the things they have in common is the need for detachment. To detach emotionally, to detach from judgment, to detach from expectation. This is the challenge of our time. where we are right now in such a highly charged state of affairs in the world. Everything is polarized. It flips from one point of view, one extreme, to the other, constantly. And the media is now, in my opinion, become a vehicle of digital terrorism. It is extreme. I don't care which side of the spectrum you're going to be getting the news from, but it sure is frightening. It's a lot of worst case scenario, and it is designed to activate fear and outrage. The day after the election, I stopped watching the news. I haven't watched it since. And it's the best choice I've ever made, because it is what it is. I acknowledge, accept, and allow that's where we are right now. And whatever happens, happens. I am going to focus on creating my state of being. I'm being healthy, I'm being centered and balanced and grounded. And if I come into contact with something that I need to deal with or respond to, then I will. But the rest of it is theater of the mind. And if you get caught in the theater of the mind of the media, there's no end to it. It's a constant spiral bouncing around. You must detach, turn it off, step back, cleanse your internal palate, and just breathe. What you will notice is that you have certain narratives that you are harboring. Worst case scenarios, what if scenarios of the near or distant future. And when you focus on them, you begin to react to them as if they are happening right now, because your body cannot distinguish the difference between future and present. The body is reacting to the mind. And if the mind moves into a scenario and begins to describe it, you will react to it emotionally and physiologically as if it is happening now. And that's what makes you anxious and stressed and upset and worried and fearful. You have to be able to see that. Step back, observe that pattern, that habit, that process, and go, you know what? I can step back from that. And I've done this many times, where I've turned off all media for a week at a time and then come back to it. And the thing that just is unbelievable is how the story is still the same. It's the same damn 5 stories, whatever it is, but either amplified or modified. You don't miss anything. Our tendency to want to look at that is one of self-preservation. We like to believe that if we know what's going on, we can prepare for it. And my experience has taught me that doesn't really work. It doesn't really work. You know what's going on right now? Look around your room. Feel where you are right now. That is what is going on for you right now. If you choose to focus beyond this space, beyond your own personal experience, then you're going to become more reactive. This is why a meditative practice that is grounding and centering in the present, in the body, is essential. Understand this. Let's say I'm thinking about the news and all the violence and all the trouble and all the uncertainty and chaos. I'm going to get pretty upset. It's going to be exhausting after a certain period of time. Now I'm going to do my practice. Soften, smile, breathe into my belly. hold that, maybe do the waterfall, empty my body of some of that emotional energy and that charge. And what happens naturally is you detach and disconnect from those narratives, stories. It happens automatically. When you shift your focus from one object of attention to another, you successfully detach from the first object and connect to the second one. So detachment happens so easily and so naturally, and it's governed by focus and attention. What am I choosing to focus on? What am I choosing to give my full attention to? And again, whatever that is will have an effect on your state of being and on your practice. So choose your objects wisely, play with different objects, see how they feel, and how some objects are easier to stay connected to than others. But also notice that feeling of detaching and letting go of the narrative, of the image, of the story, even just for a period of time. Folks, if you don't do that for yourself, you're going to make yourself so stressed and unbalanced that you may become ill for no good reason at all, other than that is part of our current societal dynamic. We are being bombarded with fearful stimulation 24 hours a day. It's hard to escape it, to keep us in an unbalanced, fearful state. Because when you are in fear, you cannot sense and feel yourself clearly. You cannot see anything clearly as it is. You're looking through the filter of fear, of terror, of anger, and everything that you look at looks fearful and makes you angry. You have to detach, create the space and the time to be still, to practice, to breathe, to focus. Use short periods of time, small ones, a minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes to begin with. And what you'll notice is if you do that frequently, let's say 5 times a day, start with 1 minute 5 times a day, and then go to 3 minutes 5 times a day. What you'll notice, like connecting the dots, that balanced state becomes more consistent throughout the day because you're coming back into contact and connection with it. You are creating it with your practice. The idea is to create it so frequently that that state becomes your constant state, and that the fearful, agitated state becomes the exception instead of the rule of, oh my God, that's how I have to live. No, you do not have to live that way. And you have to realize that. It is not healthy. It's not going to help you in any way. It's not going to help protect you either. Because these things are things that we don't have immediate contact, connection, or control over. Acknowledge, accept, and allow is a great mantra. Acknowledge, accept, and allow over and over again. That becomes a meditative practice. It's a powerful one because when you acknowledge, accept, and allow whatever is, there's no resistance to it. There's no reaction to it. You can get over something very quickly simply by accepting and allowing it. It doesn't mean that you're being passive. It doesn't mean that you're acquiescing to anything. It just means that you are acknowledging the truth of the reality of this moment. It's a living practice in which you are creating that feeling of balance, of harmony, and that becomes more of your constant state. And thank you, guys.